Hello, my name is Antonio Papano. I'm a patron of the Keyboard Charitable Trust. I was born in Britain. I've lived and studied in America and now divide my time mostly as music director of the Royal Opera House Covent Garden here in London and the Santa Cecilia Orchestra and Chorus in Rome. Music has no borders, and the Keyboard Trust neither. Over its long history, it has presented young concert pianists of 34 different nationalities, offering them performing opportunities internationally and now globally by means of these internet broadcasts. All are ready to grace the great concert halls. I now invite you to hear them in conversation and in concert. Please remember their names, then ask the Keyboard Trust to send them to perform where you are. Then you too will have helped to accomplish our true mission. Thank you very much.
Welcome to Keyboard Charitable Trust podcasts. This program presents Alexander Ullman in conversation with Keyboard Trust Artistic Director and world-renowned Liszt specialist Dr. Leslie Howard. They discuss life as musicians, matters of interpretation, and remember anecdotes from their careers. After the discussion, you can hear Alexander perform live at Wigmore Hall in April 2016 as part of Weicat series, where he plays Ravel's Oiseau Triste and Liszt's Sonata in B minor. Enjoy.
Very nice.
I'm
sorry that the piano's not in tune.
No, it's okay. I'm sorry that my hands are sort of relatively incapable of doing anything on the...
No, fear not, fear not. Well...
It's a pleasure to be on the Leslie Howard Show.
Oh, it's not the Leslie Howard Show. Yeah. You say whatever you like. That's what you're here to do.
I think it should be.
But it's... no, it's... you're one of the most distinguished people who's ever come through the Keyboard Trust. So you just need to tell us how you came by the Keyboard Trust in the first place, and
yeah, oh, okay.
And then we'll take it from there.
All right. Well, it was 3 years ago, and I met Christopher Axworthy, one of your fellow artistic directors, and in Italy, and I was playing for Elisa Virtualazza, and he heard me there. And I played in Oxford as well afterwards, and I heard about it also through Evie Berezovsky, who's one of my very good friends, who's already with the Trust. And so I applied and played in Steinway Hall, the Baptism by Fire, and then started a couple of years ago.
Good. It is a bit of a baptism by fire, because the audience can actually hear you breathing. It's that close to you, and the temperature in there. Last night we managed to do a concert where we kept all the doors open, all the way around the building.
Oh, really? What, to kind of try and air the acoustic?
Yes, because
Right.
but that room actually gets very hot,
Oh, really? Okay, I see.
like Black Hole of Calcutta hot.
Yeah.
and it's not one of the most pleasant places to play. Though the piano's nice.
Yes, very nice. Yeah.
It's but there's a lot of things to do. The trouble is it's very hard to get a venue which is the right size for a small audition type concert, where you can ask good people to come and listen to you, and you can play a reasonable program and feel comfortable about it. Because we can't book Wigmore Hall for everybody to do an audition. It'd be lovely if we could, but and then it's but we're dealing with it, trying to improve the venue in little ways, and make it work better. But it is quite hard to play a short program which is going to be entertaining, but going to tell people exactly what sort of an artist you are. Anyway, you've obviously succeeded with all of this.
Yeah.
So,
Had a great time. Yeah.
well, and you just played the prize winners recital at Wigmore, which is marvellous. And I don't know what's next for you anyway.
I'm playing in Birmingham tomorrow.
Well, they're lucky. No.
Yeah, and at the Barber Institute. And
Well-
I've got another Wigmore lunchtime in April.
Oh, that's good.
I'll be playing the Liszt Sonata, so I'll probably come and get some more advice from you about that,
Well,
if that's all right.
well, of course it's all right.
Yeah.
It's nice when people ask, because that is one of those pieces which everyone thinks they know how it goes, and well, this applies to quite a lot of pieces, doesn't it? That you stop looking at the score because you think you already know what's in it, and especially if other people's performances are ringing fresh in your ears, and
And in particular, if your scores happen to be really heavy and very irritating to cart around everywhere.
yes, but it always amazes me the number of things in that work in particular, even on page 1, that people have either not seen or have seen it once, but it's passed them by.
Just refuse to see.
Well, I've told this story a lot, but the very first recording of this piece, which is in 1929 by Alfred Cortot, who's a great pianist. But several of the standard errors are right there in just misreadings,
Yeah.
and everybody copies them.
I think it's the hardest thing to do with a piece like that, piece like the Liszt Sonata, where there's so much tradition, so many recordings, everyone does the same things. It's so difficult to actually be able to see past that, what you've heard.
Well, that's exactly what you got to do, though.
That's exactly what you've got to do, yeah.
Because the most obvious thing to say is that this is a performance tradition which doesn't come from the composer in any way. It can't do. None of his students recorded the piece, although there's a piano roll of one of them, but that's a different question. And the recording tradition of it starts with Cortot and then Horowitz, and more or less all of the recordings that follow stem from them, not from the score.
Yeah.
And so the fact that nobody does the articulation correctly, or almost, that one, whereas it's very clear, just one of the most instructive things to do with this piece, if you're not happy with any of the editions that you've ever seen, is look at the facsimile of the manuscript. It's been reprinted now in a very beautiful edition with even showing you what's under all the bits that he's pasted in when he's rewritten passages. But that articulation is very clear that the triplet is separated from the next note, which is staccato. And it is so easy to play it running the four notes in together, and but it isn't what he wrote. Oh, that's how you hear it. Yeah. But slightly before that is the first wicked sin that you encounter in almost every performance, which is when it moves from lento assai to allegro energico to play forte immediately. Yes, that one. Yeah. And that started with corto. There's a crescendo, but that's all there is. And the top note, which is the first note of the theme, is marked forte, not fortissimo, just forte. Fortissimo is coming later. Indeed, 3 Fs is coming later. And if you've done it all on page 1, it's a bit like having wasted all your ammunition. Yeah. But the Liszt Sonata is by no means the only victim of this kind of thing. It happens with quite a lot of things where there is a way of playing. But this way of playing nearly always only dates from the age of recording.
Yeah.
And
most of the major pieces in the core repertoire like that.
Yes. Well, I wonder if anyone in modern times who sits down to murder the first ballad of Chopin ever just goes and looks at it at a table to see what it actually says, just so perchance they might do it. There is one problem of tempo in that piece which he doesn't resolve, which is when you get to the presto at the end. Yeah, all of that. The passage which is very easy to attack too fast and then fill you full of regret. But the question is what tempo or selection of tempi should be adopted on the last page. Because apart from a ritenuto and a accelerando.
Oh, you mean this?
Chopin. Yeah, well, for my money, it's quite clear that having no other instruction, it's still presto.
Right, so it's just.
But should be the same tempo. Otherwise, it makes no sense.
I haven't played it since I was 13, so I probably do all of the wrong things.
Well, most people do all of the wrong things, but it seems to me that this piece was not a casual composition, and although he hasn't bothered to tell us, or he's deliberately withheld the information, what poem or story it's based on or inspired by, nonetheless it tells a story. You can make one up to fit it, but musically speaking, it begins with come over here and sit down quietly. I'm going to tell you a story. And it's it's a splendid little line of music. And I say line deliberately because of the number of people who whack the pedal down and turn it into an A flat major chord.
Okay.
You play it. You hear that quite often. But that isn't it.
No, that's not it. Actually, it should be, is. That's when you cut to, and then...
well, you can find somebody who's recorded the right notes without any extraneous pedal. You'll have to look carefully because there's not many of them. But this is but this is part of the fun of playing the piano, though, is not to be different because you want to be different, because that's a very bad way to play music, and it's a very bad way of composing as well. But don't be intimidated by the shelf of CDs, because when you go out to make a performance, the reason they want to hear you, and they want to hear it, and they want to hear something that is the result of some careful thought, and you know.
Well, my philosophy is that if we really just try and look at the score and play the music exactly as we think the composer should have written it, then that's the best we can do. And these people who are obsessed with trying to be different and trying to be interesting, you're going to be different and interesting anyway, because you're interpreting it, and everyone has a different personality. It's true,
and there are no two performances that are alike, or nor should there be, which is why we keep going to hear some of these pieces for the 100th time, because you very often hear something you didn't hear before. And this also happens when you prepare things for performance, especially if you go back to something that you learned when you were a teenager.
Yeah.
And then you think, oh, I missed that before. How did I miss that? It's standing out there like it's got a red flag on it.
No, but it still happens to me.
Well, it happens to everybody.
I've been learning Ravel Oiseau Triste at the moment for like the past 3 weeks. And I just noticed yesterday that it's actually not... so I thought it was... And I've been doing that throughout the whole thing. It's actually... And I just didn't see it, and I've been staring at the score.
It happens.
Yeah.
It happens. But it's good to discover it before you actually get, you know, cast onto a record or something. But this is the whole business of preparing things. The performance has got to be half you and half the composer, otherwise there's not going to be a performance. And the composer can't play off the paper. You are an absolutely necessary medium.
Yeah. Well, there's quite often I feel like a problem that people have is that they can go too far. They can end up just being so obsessed with what's written on the page that actually you're not trying to find what the composer intended anymore.
You end up without a performance at all.
Yeah.
You can do a document, a sound document that lays down all of the notes that Chopin wrote in the order in which he wrote them, at the right dynamic and with the right articulation, and with none of the music present.
Yeah.
And you really have to find the way through in between, because you want the conversation that Chopin wishes to have with his audience to reach the person in the back row, and that means you have to be a really good medium for the conversation.
Yeah, which is great because everyone wants license to do whatever they want, but they stop. Or always trying to stop yourself, but there's some element which of the music where you have to allow yourself.
You do,
to do that,
and it's not because you want to be willful or eccentric.
No.
In fact, there's very little of that kind of playing.
You must always be very humble.
That withstands repeated listening.
Yeah.
I'm not wishing to speak deliberately ill of him, but I'm just reminded of Glenn Gould's recording of the Fifth French Suite, where he plays.
Oh, lovely.
And you think, why? You know, it's possible that you could put an ornament on that D, but it wouldn't be staccato, and it wouldn't have an accent, and you know. And in any case, it's superfluous to requirements. But he was one of those players who could be almost as eccentric as he liked and get away with it. But other times, eccentric players actually get, I think, closer, maybe, to the spirit in which the composer played. I think of Friedrich Gulda playing Mozart, who always managed to sound like he was improvising the piano part, and it was going to be different the next time. And we know that Mozart played, especially his slow movements, he never played them the same twice. And even in some of the outer movements, there are places where he writes in shorthand, and it's very irritating to hear people just play one single note occupying a whole bar when it's quite clear that what you're supposed to do is play an arpeggio. And because they think, oh, but it's not what he wrote. But that's a misunderstanding of the word wrote. So if you want to play another tune...
It's not going to be very good, but I could try.